right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Nest. That is the New England Sports Talk. And as promised, we are back today to recap the Patriots' 47-17 loss to the Buffalo Bills in the wild card round yesterday that ends the Patriots season with a 10-8 record. There's obviously plenty to digest and discuss from this blowout loss, which ended the season. And joining me today are Anirban Chakraborty, Rohan Venkatesh, and Ujan Talukdar. How are you all doing? And Ujan, great to have you back again on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. It's not exactly the ideal circumstance to come back, but you got to do what you got to do. It's out of our control, and life goes on, I guess.
Well, you really can't complain about what I saw last night, given my expectations for last night. If you heard what I said on the podcast yesterday, but I mean, even though the Patriots, they got blown out, I did kind of say yesterday that getting blown out would almost be better than having a close game and a loss. So yeah, I'm gonna have some takes on that later on, but it's always good to see everyone around over here, especially this day after a season-ending loss. And it's good to know that despite the fact that the Patriots season is over, that we're all still here, and we're gonna look to fight another season.
Continue to be here throughout the rest of the year, right? Because once the NFL season is over, come February, we will go back to talking about the other Boston teams in more detail for sure. So we will be around. You will not be seeing the last of us because of last night.
Oh yes, and the Nest will definitely go on. So this is definitely not the end of it, despite the fact that we have been focusing primarily on the Patriots over the course of the last few weeks of the season, and of course during their one-game playoff run, however short that was. But we are a New England sports podcast, and we do capture the other teams. So if you ever want to hear anything about the Red Sox or the Celtics or the Bruins or even the Revolution, right? This is the go-to place, and we look forward to serving you for the remainder of their seasons. And
very quick aside on the Revolution, isn't it amusing that the Revolution and Patriots both were one and done?
Well, yeah, that's kind of a weird thing. I mean, both are craft-owned teams, both play at Gillette, except the only difference is that the Revs' loss was a little bit more shocking since they were a 1 seed. And I believe they had the best record at the MLS at the time. And that was kind of like, okay, you can have the best record.
They both lost to a New York-based team.
Yeah, but I think New Yorkers will have a lot to say about that because upstate is very different from.
Let's go back.
But anyway,
we will talk more about the other teams.
All that aside, we still have to kind of get our minds over last night's massacre. So I'll let the others take over.
Rohan, this time a massacre is the correct word to use because a 30-point loss where it really was like a 37-point loss. Because I don't care. The last touchdown came in garbage time. So, I mean, this was just atrocious. But
despite the fact that it was a last-second touchdown, I mean, I can't help but notice the fact that the defense couldn't make a single stop.
Literally could not make a stop.
That is the defense's literal job. That is literally their only job, and they could not do that. And these are paid professionals who make tens of millions of dollars a year at the high end, millions of dollars a year, at least at the intermediate end. So, I mean, like, it really makes you question what they're being paid all that money for. That's just my perspective as a casual fan. But anyway, I know I've been filibustering, so I'm gonna let the others take over on this one.
Yeah, well, in these moments, after having a day to kind of reflect and get composure, Tom Brady is of course known for saying you either win or you learn, and he's also said, you can't make up for things that have happened in the past. You've just got to think about what you're going to do moving forward. So I think that's the mindset I'll be taking in our discussion today. I think doesn't really bear any repetition that we saw a really difficult to watch loss across all aspects of the field, especially defense. So I'm going to be kind of thinking in this discussion about what we can learn and how we can address this moving forward. So we can see a path back to the Patriots that we've all grown up seeing. Because I know that at the end of the day, all of us have grown up seeing a Patriots team that has been competing with the best teams in the league for 2 decades. And I just want to be thinking about today how we get back to that kind of standard, or at least to a similar high standard.
Speaking of the old Patriots teams, did anyone happen to catch the old Patriots quarterback today who won his 5th playoff game in a row now without
Well, yeah,
Patriots?
he definitely did it against the Eagles this time. So I guess a win and a loss in the Super Bowl against the Eagles, and now another playoff win. So
This was
I
16.
guess that makes his record a little bit more
It
interesting
was a
at this
bigger
point.
win. Yeah. So, I mean, anyways, just quick aside for that. But I don't know. This was just an atrocious game by the defense. And I mean, the Patriots are going to be the first defense in NFL history. Yes, first defense in NFL history not to force a punt, a turnover on downs, or a field goal attempt. And the Buffalo Bills yesterday had 8 total drives and scored a touchdown in 7 of them. And the final drive was at the end of the game when Mitchell Trubisky came in and kneeled to basically end the game. And the unit did not record a sack. I think they did record one. They did have one quarterback hit, but they also didn't have any tackles for a loss last night. And I mean, let's just start with this then. Who are we blaming for the defense's performance? Like, obviously, the coaching deserves blame, but are we blaming more the players?
Nepotism. Nepotism. Bill Belichick has 2 of his sons on there, and they couldn't do their job.
That's it. Like, what about the players?
Well, I mean, with the players, I mean, they just couldn't get it done. I mean, I mentioned before the game that the key matchup would be J.C. Jackson versus Stephon Diggs, but I mean, the Bills offense, it was just so potent right from the beginning, right? Like Devin Singletary, he had several carries and he was able to carry it like to the end zone, and just the Bills offense pretty much being able to steamroll anything and everything that the Patriots defense tried to put up. So I would have to say that in the future, looking forward, it's kind of fair to say that we got to pretty much tear down the whole thing. It's really not, and in some sense, it's kind of a silver lining that the Bills beat us by a lot, right? I'm kind of thankful for the fact that we got a shellacking as opposed to a narrow loss, right? Because a narrow loss would have left us with this illusion that the system is still intact. Belichick still has a handle over things, and the defense still has a handle over things. It was just a bad day. But, I think yesterday really showed just how bad this team has really gotten. And the last 3 or 4 games where they lost 3 out of 4 in the regular season, that didn't really show much. Or at least you could have argued that it didn't really show much. But a kind of humiliating playoff loss like this is inexcusable. You got to tear the whole thing down at this point. Now, the follow-up question that
When
would
you
be,
say
what would you
tear
replace it with?
down, what about on offense? So what does that mean when you say
Not
tear
the
down?
offense. That's not. I don't know. Look. Not. And I don't mean to say this about the offense, right? Because Mac Jones. I mean, he he was not really able to do much, but that's also not really a fair criticism because the offense didn't really get a lot of opportunities, right? Because he had to constantly play under pressure from several scores down pretty early on, and after that, it was just downhill from there. I mean, I would say that second drive of the, I mean, I would say that first drive of the game when Mac Jones, I mean, like it honestly showed promise at that point. And that interception in the end zone when he couldn't get to Aguilar, he couldn't connect with Aguilar, and it was taken back the other way. I mean, eventually for another Bills touchdown the other way. That was kind of, I would say that was probably the breaking point. I mean, when I was watching at that point, it was still early on, but I was like, when I was watching, I was like, okay, this is not just bad, but it's probably over at this point because any kind of hope that the Patriots had at kind of making a run for it is pretty much dashed, and they had the crowd on their side and the cold weather. I mean, I know the cold weather was supposed to be managed for the Patriots, but the Bills have seen us before. I know we've seen them before, but overall, they were just a better team, and the slightest momentum that you give them by not being able to convert on those kind of opportunities is just really all that they needed. And it was just a disastrous performance overall. And I would say for the defense, there's some serious questions to be asked.
Yeah, so if I could comment on that, I think, like I said earlier, we all know that what happened was really a catastrophe. But again, when we're thinking about what we're learning here, a big trend in this, I think we do have to be kind of careful about thinking about defense, because going forward, there are of course some players where the matter seems kind of out of our hand. There's multiple players will be entering kind of the free agency conversation, including Dante Hightower, Devin McCourty, JC Jackson. But when we look at the defensive performance yesterday, and you look at I mean, it was there for the whole world to see. I know I'm not the first person to be saying this at all, but the athletic battles were impossible for us to win yesterday. Time after time again, Isaiah McKenzie, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs. Anytime there was a race, you just knew the Patriots were going to lose it, and that the Bills were going to get an extra 5 or 10 yards when it looked like they'd actually get tackled for a loss or something like that. And I don't want to say it's a little interesting because kind of the kind of knee-jerk reaction here is to kind of look at the fact that we have players approaching maybe the twilight of their more productive portion of their careers, like Hightower's 31, Van Noy's 30, Jamie Collins is 32, Devin McCourty's 34 right now. But yesterday I didn't see really anyone on defense really doing their job, right? I mean, we saw Kyle Duggar lose out to Gabriel Davis multiple times on battles. We saw Adrian Phillips unable to handle Dawson Knox on the second touchdown. Adrian Phillips is a free agent. Duggar is like maybe 25, 26. There's no way I see us letting him go, nor should we this season.
Adrian Phillips just signed an extension as well.
And yeah, Phillips signed an extension. He's not going anywhere. So, and then, we saw Jawan Bentley got lost. JC Jackson lost to Stephon Diggs. Devontae Busby falls down when he's trying to tackle Josh Allen. He was elevated off the practice squad. My point here, and another point too, is like, we just saw Josh Allen even in the early first quarter, Matt Jude, he's running right at Matt Judon and basically just completely out jukes him and just runs past so easily. I could go on and on, My point here is that there wasn't really a single player on the defense who really came out looking that sharp for us, but I think we need to be really careful in thinking about what exactly it means to have to kind of have like a turnover of the defense in the upcoming season. I definitely think that this game maybe gives us some clues that we need to bring in more athletic, more mobile players. The Patriots, Gerard Mayo was telling us in October, the Patriots like having big linebackers. They like having people who can play linebacker, who can play safety, who can kind of come in and join the blitz or join in coverage and passing. They like having big players as opposed to maybe a more common NFL trend of having really smaller, quick players who can run around. And I think this game tells us that we need to have a little more of that versatility, maybe more room for players like Josh Uch, who is only 23 and is a little more in that kind of smaller mold of linebacker, as opposed to just relying on really kind of big players like Hightower. And maybe it's time, and I think actually this season we'll probably think it's maybe time to start replacing players like Hightower and Devin McCourty, who have done so much for the Patriots. McCourty's been with us since 2010. I think they all deserve to really go in the Patriots Hall of Fame for their contributions in our Super Bowl run of the 2010s. But that's kind of what I see as what we need to on defense. And look, at the end of the day, this was a record, right? The Bills never the first time we're ever seeing 7 opening drives lead to 7 touchdowns, right? But it's not clear to me that the Bills are the best offense to have ever played the game, right? So that obviously tells us that there were also some key lapses on defense, and also that there is maybe the sense that the Bills have really been able to figure us out. I was listening to like the question, right? Like, if we were playing any other team, could we envision them exposing us like this to get 49, like to get like 7 points, to get 7 opening touchdown drives? And when I look back in hindsight, I said earlier it didn't really matter to me that we were playing the Bills versus the Bengals because the fact that we knew each other kind of goes both ways. But this was really a game where they absolutely read our number on defense. They absolutely knew how to play mobile, quick football against us. Because look, we've played mobile quarterbacks over the years with players who are also not like known for being that fast, right? It's not like our defense has like being these big fast guys. Like so that's something that we have to think about, because we're going to be playing the Bills twice next season at least, and for the next, right? We have to figure out how to play in the AFC East against this team going into next season.
I mean, oh yeah, go on, John.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, it's I was kind of it just seemed as though the defense just never got off the bus. I mean, I don't know if the bus was running the entire time, and like, the players were just kind of like asleep on the bus, and then they kind of just got forced off or whatever. But it's not really just this game. It's really a matter of since the bye week. So, I mean, they lost 3 out of 4, and like the defense has not played well. I mean, allowing 27 against Miami, that's like, and Miami didn't even make the playoffs. Like, please. And then you have, what is it, 20 against the Colts in a game you just have a slow started.
By the way, Miami was actually more like 21 because remember they had 33 points, but 7 came on the pick six, and then the last 6 were like the last play of the
Oh,
game. So
right, yeah,
it was
20.
like really 20 points to Miami.
Right. Yeah, and 20 to Indianapolis. But like still, you couldn't even hold Buffalo to, like, they didn't even have a fourth down until the last seconds of the game. Like, and that was inconsequential because of
But we
the
don't even want to count that really. Like I'm not even counting
yeah.
that
Yeah, I
last
mean,
drive.
yeah, I'm
Like,
not even counting that either. But like, but that just goes to show how effective they were. And not only is it like you were talking about how Buffalo's figured this out. They haven't punted against us in 8 quarters. So you go back to the game at Gillette Stadium. They punt? No. Did they punt last night? No. Like, like it tells you that the defense is like something's really wrong with our defense. And of course, not having Jalen Mills is like that hurt a little bit, but like one player is not gonna losing one player should not have the make the entire defense collapse. Let's be honest.
no, I mean, it's not just that, right? Like because like this unit couldn't even pressure Josh Allen properly. So it wasn't just like the secondary that was bad. The secondary was really, really bad. And I'm going to talk about that in just a bit. But it's just like Matthew Judon. Like what happened to Matthew Judon? Because he was amazing for the Patriots. He was like looking like a real all-pro. Like he was terrific. And then these last like 4 or 5 games, he hasn't been the same. Like 1 tackle, 1 hit yesterday. And he must have been injured or something because this was not the Matthew Judon who we saw for the bulk of the season. And then the secondary. So like I think this is what happened when like Jalen Mills went down, and then yesterday it was Jojuan Williams, D'Angelo Ross, Justin Bethel, and they were having to match up.
And Devontae Busby.
Yeah, Devontae Busby. Like
He was
you have
off
all
the
these
practice
guys
squad.
who are like kind of exactly like on the practice squad. That means like, I mean, they're really low on the depth chart already, and you're matching them against the Bills wide receivers who are very, very good. So this was already like a big problem regardless. But I think in the off season, you got to really kind of evaluate and sort of see like who you kind of move on from. Like I think a lot of the veterans, like obviously Hightower, McCourty, thank you for the Super Bowl years. Like you guys were terrific from 2014 to 2018. And we will never forget that. But it's time to move on at some point, right? Jamie Collins, part of the Super Bowl 49 team. I think a lot of us have sentimental attachment. I do to these guys because they were huge for the 3 Super Bowl runs or however
Yeah,
many
and
years.
McCourty's like Walter Payton Man of the Year like every
Yeah,
year.
I
Just
mean,
great guy.
exactly. I mean, I'm not doubting their character. I mean, I'm a fan of these guys for life. I mean, they will always bring us happy moments. But at some point, you have to also look and move on from these players. And maybe, I don't know, bring them on the coaching staff then. Like, I would love to have McCourty and Hightower as part of the coaching staff to advise this team because they know Bill Belichick and they've succeeded in the system. So, yes, please bring them on the staff at some point. I like them along with Gerard Mayo. But as players, you need to go younger and you need to get more athletic. Like watching Tampa today, like watching Devin White and Levante David absolutely wreak havoc on Jalen Hurts today, a mobile quarterback. Now, Jalen Hurts is not Josh Allen. I'm not saying that, but just watching and seeing like how the Buccaneers defense sort of blitzed and created havoc on Philadelphia. That's the type of stuff the Patriots need to do going forward. And another thing on Nearbon, like we talk about like sort of what happened in the past, like what used to work like back in the day. Like the thing is like with Brady, I really feel like we're seeing this more and more now that he's no longer here. Like Brady was able to mask a lot of the holes on this team because he was just that good. So you could have deficiencies on this roster year in, year out. And Brady was just so good, you wouldn't really have to like worry about that much. And now you're sort of seeing how big these holes really are. Like Mac Jones, I like Mac Jones, and I'm going to get to him in a bit, but I mean, obviously he's not Brady at this point, and we don't. I mean, likely he won't ever be like a Hall of Fame quarterback. Maybe he will at some point down the road, but that's not realistic to expect year 1, year 2 to have Mac Jones become at that level. So I don't know. I think going forward, you're going to have to change your approach a bit because these Tom Brady days are gone and we have to move on from that era. And we have to change up the approach going forward too, because I mean, this isn't going to cut it. Like, I mean, I was expecting a loss. I predicted 20-12, but I mean, 47-17, that's just inexcusable. Like, this is like the worst defensive performance I could have ever expected from anyone. Like even like a bad team like the Jacksonville Jaguars, I bet they would not have allowed 7 straight touchdowns. Like, this is like all-time bad. Like, and this Patriots defense is not supposed to be like that. So I don't know what you do. Like, maybe
I would also say that I was just gonna say that if you think about it, week 18, I was watching the Jets-Bills game, and the Jets had it like 13-10 into the fourth quarter. Like, please, the Jets put up a more of a fight than the Pats did last night. And
exactly. Like, how is this
please.
possible? Like a divisional opponent too, right? The Jets have seen the Bills before. They see them every year. Same with
Yeah,
Miami.
they play. Yeah, exactly.
Atlanta, the Falcons, who missed the playoffs, intercepted Josh Allen 3 times at Orchard Field in Buffalo just a few weeks ago, back on January 2nd. How is it that Atlanta and the Jets have a better defensive game plan than Bill Belichick? That's just puzzling. I don't know how that's possible. So there have to be changes that need to be made at some point. I don't know what they are, and we will talk more about the offseason come March because that warrants a bigger, deeper discussion then. But I mean, just from last night, like it's inexcusable to me. Like, really, like, I mean, like, I have to give this performance. Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, when we give season grades, like, it's going to definitely bring down the season grade I had for this team, and we'll get to the grade right afterward. But I don't know. It was just very disappointing. But just quick note, Mac Jones, I was actually okay with him. Like, I think 24 of 38, 232 yards. The first interception he threw to Micah Hyde, just a terrific play by Micah Hyde, by the way, where Aguilar, like, I mean, if he had thrown it, like, I mean, I think Aguilar, like, was in a perfect position, but just Hyde just made a terrific play. So, you know what? Hats off to Micah Hyde.
I would have just said that maybe Aguilar could have just kind of jumped up for the ball, like when he saw it, just at least make an effort rather than just try to wait for it to fall to his chest. That's just one thing I would say.
That's true, yeah. Like, I mean, yeah. I mean, overall, I was actually okay with Mac Jones. The first drive, like when he rushed for that 3rd and 10, that was a terrific play. And then Brandon Bolden dropped the pass, and then he hit Hunter Henry for like a 30-yard completion or something like that on the first drive. That's when things were looking good. I was actually really excited then because I was like, okay, this can match it. And then not the pick six, just the interception kind of just threw off the momentum because then the Bills scored another touchdown as they did all day. And I took some notes on the first half. So the Bills had 4 scoring drives and just 4 drives. So the first one, 9 plays, 70 yards, took 5 minutes and 15 seconds, ended with Allen's first touchdown to Dawson Knox. The second drive after the interception, 10 plays, 80 yards, 5 minutes, another touchdown to Knox by Allen. Third drive, 10 plays, 81 yards, 6 minutes and 3 seconds, ended with a rushing touchdown by Singletary, made it 20-0 since Tyler Bass, the kicker, missed the extra point. And then the fourth drive, right before the half, which made it 27-0, 89 yards, 1 minute, 51 seconds, ended with a rushing touchdown by Singletary. So field position wasn't even a problem. Like, the Patriots actually put the defense in excellent field position, and the defense couldn't do anything. That was what was really concerning to me, right? Like, it's not just a short field. Buffalo basically started at their own 25, 30-yard line consistently, and they just didn't have an issue. It didn't matter. You could have put them at the 1-yard line and they would have driven 99 yards. That was how bad the defense was playing. And that to me is like the most concerning thing. Like, you know, like if the interception had set the Bills up at their own like 5 at the Patriots like 10-yard line, like the first game against Buffalo when like Harry had botched off his helmet and then they got good field position. It wasn't even like that. They didn't even have anything like that. Every drive they had was like terrific field position. And that's like what's concerning to me now. Like, I mean, I don't know how you fix this, but yeah, I mean, this is sort of my take on this. Just inexcusable play. And I was happy about Mac Jones and Kendrick Bourne, 7 catches for 77 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Jacoby Myers, I liked the effort too, 6 catches for 40 yards. But run game as well, 17 carries for 57 yards between Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. And of course, you have to abandon that run game when you're down 27-3. But it was just very disappointing. So I don't know like what else to make of it. And so let's go to the season grade now. Ujan, you want to start? What grade do you give to the season? Because this is kind of an interesting topic. Like, obviously, last year, 7-9 missed the playoffs. So this is obviously better than that. Like, you made the playoffs. But what do you sort of like kind of give the grade? And for next year, what are you kind of hoping for now?
So I think considering the free agent acquisitions, it was like at least a minimum to go to the playoffs, and they did that. But losing like that to like having that kind of show on national TV in the playoffs, I would have to say probably at most a B minus, unfortunately. I think, like I said, the expectation was to get in the playoffs. Yes. But like having a 2-4 start to the season against teams that were probably beatable. At least they were in the game. Like, for example, week 1 versus Miami, please, fumbling in the red zone. Like, come on now. Like, it doesn't even matter what week it is. Like, you just cannot fumble in the red zone. Like, this is why you have preseason, right? I mean, no, like they kind of. I mean, I do give them credit for like the 7-game win streak, but it's kind of like the middle was good, but the beginning and the end were just really bad. So, that's why I just would say B minus. I think Mac Jones had a pretty good rookie year, considering he had like the best numbers out of all the rookie quarterbacks. But he, it's not just offense, it's offense, defense, and special teams. And honestly, with 3 block punts and special teams this entire year, like that's gonna bring the grade down too. So
quick aside, Ujan, because you just reminded me of the block punt. Yesterday, probably the only thing I can give the Patriots any credit for was blocking that point after attempt. So finally, the special teams actually did something good. That's the only thing I can see, right? Like once, because the other time the guy just missed it. But the first time, I was like, okay, at least something is going their way now. At least he missed something. I mean, that's how bad it was, really, right? So, yeah, Rohan, go ahead. I just want to hear your score for this.
Yeah, I mean, like I was actually going to say B minus as well. I'm going to second Ujan on this one. The way I see it is that average, assuming the average is a C, and I would rate last season as about average, so about a C or a C plus, roughly, right? This season was definitely better than the last season. You had Mac Jones coming in as a rookie, and there were many unexpected things that happened in the sense that Cam Newton, he got released, and that's something that I've probably said repeatedly. I wasn't expecting before the season really started. And I wasn't really expecting Mac Jones to really do that great overall. And to be fair, I mean, he kind of struggled in the beginning, but then he kind of got his groove on. And then towards the end of the season, his defense kind of let him down. So if you put all that together, then I would say that a championship contending team would be, I mean, obviously winning the Super Bowl would be an A. I mean, contending for a Super Bowl would be like an A minus, B plus. But they're better than average. Average is a C. So is it a C plus? No, I'd say it's a little bit better than that because they did go on that 7-game win streak. But yeah, I mean, like given the low expectations I had, I'd say B. It would have been a B or B plus, but since the last night was just so humiliating, I got to go with the B minus. So that's my grade for the season.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand those views. I'd say my own analysis would be somewhere between a B minus and a B. Because honestly, entering this game, I think as a default, like if you were to track the grade as like a kinetic thing over the season, I'd say it would have been around like A minus range. Because again, if you look back at the beginning of the season, right? I mean, I could look back at our predictions in this podcast. I'm pretty sure that there's at least 1 or 2 people who thought we'd have a under 500 record and miss the playoffs, right? And that was kind of the baseline. We went on a 7-game winning streak. Obviously, had a poor beginning, poor end of the season. But honestly, entering this game, I would have given us an A minus, and then after that, I'm gonna knock it down like 2 to 3 to give it a B minus or a B. I think we saw enough from Mac Jones to be excited about his role going forward into next season. I think we also did see that our free agent acquisitions, or at least our off-season moves in getting Hunter Henry and Kendrick Bourne, were really, really big positives for us. Kendrick Bourne, I think he's done everything we've asked him to do. He's really fast. He makes contested catches. He makes big red zone plays for us. I think that was a fantastic signing, and I think he's going to be really good with us next year, especially if we get another wide receiver to complement him. along with whoever we have. And I also do want to highlight quickly, we had a good NFL draft class this year. You know, Christian Barmore was a phenomenal, like he's probably one of the best defensive rookie players this season, hands down, right? And obviously, like the rest of the defense, it petered off in the last few games, but that still doesn't take away really, frankly, he was phenomenal for a lot of the season. Ramondre Stevenson started off with a fumble on his first possession, turns it around, critical part of our second half offense, our rushing offense. And of course Mac Jones. So, you know, I think our draft class was really strong. We had good off-season signings. You know, we made it to the playoffs, which by the way, I don't really think that was a given. You know, I mean, if you look at 2 and 4, if you look at the AFC East, I think there are even people talking about us compared to the Dolphins in entering the season, all right? So when you take all those things and then you subtract, obviously, I'm going to definitely subtract for the way we lost because that matters too. I'm going to end up with a B minus or a B and maybe leaning towards a B.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's a good point. I think I'm going to be a little bit harsher because if a C is average, then they're definitely not average because in order to make the playoffs in the NFL, it's hard. So you have to be above average. But that's what they are right now. I'm giving them a C plus because of last night's performance. Last night's performance, I probably would have gone with a B. If they had lost like 20-12 as I had predicted, then I would have probably given them like a B minus. But last night's performance was putrid in every regard. So I have to go with the C plus. Like they played horribly. Like this was the worst game ever by a defensive team, like ever in NFL history. So because of that, I have to go with a C plus. Like yes, there are positives. Obviously, I am excited about Mac Jones, and more, I do believe now going forward, at least for the next 5 to hopefully 10 years, Mac Jones is the quarterback for the Patriots going forward. That is something I feel optimistic and I feel confident. So that is a big positive because last year we didn't even know the answer to that question at this time, right? We were wondering who the Patriots were going to draft, if they were going to sign someone in free agency, make a trade for someone. But now at least we have the answer to that, the most critical position in football. We have the answer to that. Mac Jones, I am confident that he can be the guy for the Patriots to move on from Tom Brady, the transition from Tom Brady. I do believe in Mac Jones. Yeah, do you want to say something, John?
Yeah, I do. I would say that while I do agree with the fact that we have a solution, at least for the time being, in quarterback, you just don't really know what will happen. There are two things that I will say. Like one is good, one is maybe a little iffy. I'll start with the good. The good is that we should have James White for next season. Remember how he's out for the year because of the injury? I just feel like, you know, like he brings this extra dimension of like pass catching out of the backfield. And like, you know, Tom Brady loved that when he was in Foxborough, right? And like now look, he has Giovanni Bernard, kind of like a similar running back, right? I mean, you don't necessarily have that sort of guy. I guess you have maybe Brandon Bolden, but
I think Stevenson sort of is starting to mold into that. Not yet, but
I
he's.
mean, I'd say Brandon Bolden's been that for us this season. But
Bolden was
I
pretty
do take
good.
your point though. I do take your point about James White. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, but the other thing I will say is just the limited cap space. Of course, last year, going into last offseason, they had the most cap space in the NFL. But now they have probably one of the least. And I don't know if it's one of the least, but it's definitely not as much considering the splurge we made a year ago around this time, or almost a year ago, I should say.
Well, I think some contracts are also coming off the books, right? Like McCourty, I think Hightower, Kyle Van Noy, Jamie Collins. A lot of those guys are going to be free agents potentially
Yes,
as
but
well.
then there's also, you know, you have Jonnu Smith who's owed like 15 million or something like that. I mean, you got Hunter Henry who's there. I mean, Hunter Henry is definitely worth it, but Kendrick Bourne was a steal, I think. But
Did Jonnu Smith play yesterday? It's a serious question. Is he
I
injured?
saw him play, but like
I've literally never heard his name like said once by a commentator this season, maybe like outside one jet sweep, and he's making like 50 million on like a 4-year deal.
He scored a touchdown against Tampa, actually. That's how I remember him.
Yeah.
Long time ago.
Yes, but that also being said, like I just feel like there's a lot of pieces that aren't really needed. Like I remember after Brady, we thought, oh, Jarrett Stidham's gonna be the quarterback. He was like inactive the entire year. like if we know that Mac Jones is going to be the starter, what is really the point in having Jarrett Stidham when you already have Brian Hoyer? I don't really think you need 3 quarterbacks. So that's one thing, at least to, free up some of the cap space, like on some of the positions you don't really need. I mean, and I just think that this draft is going to be extremely critical. I mean, we said that last year from an offensive point of view. Now I'm going to say it from a defensive point of view because, like it was mentioned, J.C. Jackson's going to be a free agent. Devin McCourty's aging. Dante Hightower's aging. Jamie Collins, Jawan Bentley, they're all aging. Like the only guy I will actually say is not aging and I have high hopes for is Christian Barmore. So
like Kyle Duggar, he's pretty good.
I mean, he's yes, but but remember when he got in that fight against Indianapolis and then he got ejected? Like, please. And then
that he wasn't on the field because of that during the Taylor run, even though he's one of their best run defenders. So that was very fitting, actually.
So, but like all in all, like I just feel like these are all kind of fixable things. I've seen a lot of things on social media with regarding, is Belichick going to be gone? By Belichick, I mean Bill or Steve, his son. Is Josh McDaniels going to be gone? I think
so. Ujan, just one thing, because you're talking about that. We're going to get to that now. So that's a perfect transition, by the way. We're going to talk now about like kind of the future of the coaching staff. So that's perfect. I just wanted to kind of bring that transition there, and I'll let you begin first because you are already starting. But yeah, so going forward, obviously Bill Belichick today, I don't know if you guys heard it, but he did say that he plans to return for next year. So I don't think they're going to fire him or anything like that. So I don't think we should talk about whether or not he should be fired because he's obviously going to be around at this point. So let's not talk about that, but instead let's talk about like sort of how you kind of see Belichick going into his 70s, because this is where the conversation is starting. He's going to be 70 in April. He's 69 right now. So he's already kind of at that upper echelon of ages of the coach, right? So,
I don't think age really matters when it comes to coaching. It probably does matter. I mean, it definitely matters when it comes to playing. It probably matters when it comes to do anything that closely involves being athletic in any capacity. But if you're coaching, I mean, you just have to know the strategy, right? I mean, like Bill Belichick, he's been
not just strategy, right? Because the game changes over time, right? And
the game does also change, and you need to be able to learn and adapt new methods as the game evolves.
Like in 2000 versus 2020, it's not the same.
And it's yeah, of course it's not the same NFL, but good coaches, regardless of how young or how old they are, they learn how to change with the times and they learn how to adapt. And being old is not necessarily a barrier to that. And let's face it, Belichick is old, but I mean, he's spent like 22 years plus in New England at this point, and he's given New England a good run, right? I mean, like, except that I can't help but ignore the fact that I can't help but notice the fact that all of those championships did come with Brady, and now that Brady's gone, I mean, credit to Belichick for at least keeping the Pats competitive. I mean, having Mac Jones making that gutsy decision to get rid of Cam Newton, which I've said repeatedly I didn't support at the time, but I look back at that and say it was probably the right decision. But after a kind of shellacking that he had last night, I would say that I would definitely say that the rest of the AFC East has your number, especially the way that the Bills had our number. It looked like the Dolphins had our number, and I mean, obviously, the Jets are not of immediate concern. But I remember a few years ago when the Dolphins were not of immediate concern, or even the Bills. The Bills were the laughingstock of the AFC East just a few years ago. So things can change, and things can change really, really fast. So
using that logic, couldn't you also say that the Patriots will get better from now versus then? Like, if you think the other teams can get better between then and now.
Sure, yeah, and I'm not saying that things are not going to change, but with the Patriots right now, I mean, they're definitely not the laughingstock. I mean, they're definitely
a playoff team.
They're downgraded. They're downgraded from contender to mediocre-ish team. So to really get back to contention, I would say we just got to swallow the bitter pill and tank for a few years.
Wait, no. We are not tanking. I don't know if you understand. Tanking does not work in the NFL. Like, you don't need to tank. Like, tanking would mean what? Like, you trade Mac Jones away. How do you tank?
No, you don't trade Mac Jones away. You just get better draft picks in the meantime.
You don't need better draft picks like that in the NFL, though. That's the thing.
And somehow find a way to keep Mac Jones in the meantime. Find a way to keep him from defecting.
You don't need to tank. You just need to do better in drafting, because there are, like, unlike the NBA where there's only like one or two superstars pretty much in the whole draft and everyone else is kind of just a decent role player at best, possibly. In the NFL, there are just stars in the first round, second round, third round. Tom Brady was a sixth round draft pick. Julian Edelman, seventh round draft pick. You don't need to tank to get good draft picks in the NFL.
Yeah, like
point taken over there. I mean, like you don't necessarily have to tank, but definitely tanking will definitely speed up the process.
Oh, it won't. It will instill a culture in the team.
So I would like to, so there's a caveat.
Culture right now, the culture right now is Belichick, right? The culture right now is built around Kraft and Belichick, right? And once you get rid of that core, remind you, like the fish rots from the head down. Once you get rid of that rot, then you can start over again.
So what are you suggesting now, though?
Okay,
okay, go on.
Well, okay, one just quick thing. I think both of you have some. Okay, like, so tanking. It is true that in the NFL, right, tanking is very different from basketball where you only have like 5 starters. But to be like, the one really common exception where people would tank is if there's like a really nice shiny quarterback in the draft pool you want. And we already have a nice shiny quarterback we want to make big. So that's like, if we were in a position like the Jets where we were moving on from Sam Darnold, or we were like the Dolphins tank for Tua, yeah, then in that case, like, I think that's at least, like, I do take your point, Rohan, in that kind of scenario. But I think in this scenario, since we already have someone we want to establish as a star, then I think it would be difficult to justify 2 to 3 years. And the longer we spread out the timeline, the more our expectations start to diminish. And before you know it, I don't want us to become a team who kind of starts to say, oh, in a few years we'll be good. In a few years we'll be good. I want to see us making efforts to be good.
That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen because that's just not this is not the Patriots' way of dealing with things. I mean, like you said, we have at least I wouldn't say a star quarterback, but definitely someone who's capable of being a star quarterback in the future.
You have a pretty solid offense around him.
But yeah, I mean, at least the offense is also pretty solid, right? And it's just the defense that needs to be improved. But to really improve everything from a fundamental level, something really needs to be done about the coaching staff. And I mean, despite the fact that Bill Belichick has contributed all of this for so many years, for more than 2 decades, and he's contributed all these championships, I think it's time for fresh blood. I really do. I think it's time for us to move on as a team. It's time for us to move on as a franchise. I mean, like, back when Brady was around, it was called the Brady Belichick era, but it was really the Brady era, right? Because he really ran everything. And now that he's gone, I mean, we can really see, like, just how much things have changed.
Okay, I don't know if that's necessarily true, though. Like, what about Super Bowl 53 against the Rams when they hold that Rams offense to just 3 points? That was an elite Rams offense. What about the first Super Bowl against the St. Louis Rams, the greatest show on turf? Those were good. Those were good defensive performances as well. And I'm not taking away credit for Belichick for all that he's done for this many years, but at some point it is time to move on. And I think now would be a good time to do so, because who do you propose then as a coach?
I mean, like, I don't have any great names off the top of my head, but I mean, I can't help but think about potentially Brian Flores.
Please, no.
I mean, the Dolphins got rid of him. Hey, like, he doesn't have a good record against the Patriots. So
Bill Belichick,
what better? What
Bill
better?
Belichick go for Brian Flores? Then Bill Belichick will go to Miami.
What better than to have the guy who's been beating you join your team, right? Like, that's just like how the game works at this point. So, like, yeah, Belichick will likely go somewhere else.
Then Belichick goes to Miami, then, or Houston. He will go to Miami.
Sure. He can go to Miami. He can go to Houston. He can go wherever at this point. But yeah, I mean, like, there's no way he can lead this team to this kind of a defeat without having his job on the line. That's just inexcusable.
All right. Well, okay. So if I could just, so I'll first say something, then I want to give Ujan a chance, because I'm sure he has something to say. But I do want to say that narrative is really important here, and it is important to think about correcting without overcorrecting, right? So what do I mean by that? I mean, I do want to make one thing clear, and this is not meant to be a big caveat, like, and saying, oh, like, we were fine or whatever. But keep in mind that this was a pretty unique situation in that the Bills were trying for every single offensive possession in the game. I mean, barring the knee, okay? If you look at the play-by-play, Josh Allen was passing on like every play up to when they were 40-0 up. They were playing really hard with their O-line. There's no concept of benching the quarterback or giving someone else rest so that Josh Allen or Diggs or Beasley gets rest. They played right until the very end, all right? And most of the time in the NFL, whenever you see blowouts, like look at the Eagles-Bucks game today. It ended at 31-16. The Bucks could have made it 50 or 60 if they wanted to today. I was watching that game. The Eagles got a few stops on them. The Buccaneers were running rampant. They literally could have sat out Brady for like the whole second half, wouldn't have made anything, right? Because they didn't care. Because they didn't like this was a personal game for the Bills. That's why they played so hard throughout the whole game. Like, so when you look at the scoreline 47, that's something that's important. I'm not saying this as a fact that we didn't deserve to get in 47. Of course we deserved it. We did that. My point here is that we look at the score line, but realize in a lot of games, especially in the playoffs, when a team is already decisively beaten, like we were arguably at when the Bills were 33 up or 20, even arguably 27-3, a lot of teams just take off the gas pedal and start running the ball, burn down the clock. You lose by 3 games, right? If we lost 27-3 versus 47-17, I think there'd be a very different narrative going on about this. So I do want to keep that in mind, that this was a lot like a Madden game where that the other guy is already decisively beaten and you want to just keep scoring touchdowns. That doesn't happen in every game, right? So I just want to add that as context, but because
Bills definitely wanted to kick us while we're down.
No,
that was
that's
definitely a factor.
That's my
And
point,
it's
though.
because
And that
every
just
year,
kinda
right?
adds
The
to
Patriots used to
overcorrection.
torment this team for 20 years, right? Like every year, it would just be 2 wins against Buffalo, right? Obviously not anymore, but for them, they're doing it more for their fan base, right? So I don't know.
So my point there though is that we need to be kind of careful for the 10. This was a game where we were decisively beaten, but the scoreline also represents the fact that if you were to look at just that as a metric, then then that pretty much any team has a capacity for that blowout. It's just that most teams take their foot off the gas pedal, put in a backup QB or backup third string wide receivers, and then that's why you see in the fourth quarter they score no points or something. So I do want to say that's important context. I don't want to panic about losing by 30 points because what the Bills did, most teams don't do. And I'm not saying that as it's not sportsmanlike,
Also,
whatever.
one
I'm just saying
aside,
that's a
because
fact.
Buffalo will likely be playing Kansas City next week. There's no way Buffalo will be able to just not punt again. So that is not going to be happening again. They better hope that they have enough energy now after this onslaught, because Kansas City is a different beast altogether with Patrick Mahomes, even though they did beat Kansas City earlier in the year. So that's going to be a very fun matchup next week to cover and talk about. But yeah, overall, Gujan, I just want to hear your thoughts on the head coaching situation. Do you think Belichick's job should be on the line? So I think Rohan is for moving on from Belichick. I'm very much against it at this point. What about you?
I'm with keeping Belichick. After all, the thing with it is you got a 10-win you've got a football team to get 10 wins with a rookie quarterback. How many other coaches can really do that? Let me just put that out there. Yes, I suppose they did it with Brady as a young.
You're basically giving Belichick credit for Mac Jones' success.
No, I'm not giving I'm not doing that. But it's just it's not just having a good quarterback. It's having a good team around the quarterback. The quarterback has to have somebody to throw the ball to, whether it be a tight end, wide receiver, running back out of the backfield, and of course the defense, right? So while I strongly believe that Belichick is still a good coach. I mean, we were talking about age earlier in the year. Andy Reid's still in the league, and he has Patrick Mahomes as quarterback. He's a young one, right? I know the league has a lot of younger coaches, like for example, Sean McVay.
Bruce Arians, by the way, is older than Bill Belichick of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Right, but I'm still referring to some of the older quarterbacks, right? Or older coaches. Sorry, I mean I'm not saying not many people are older than Belichick, Bruce Arians, as you said, but it's I just think that age is just a number. If you're coaching, you will see the trends in the NFL over the years, right? And it's almost unprecedented nowadays to have a coach be in this be at the helm of one team for 20 years. Like, who else has done that? I mean, Pete Carroll's also one of an older coach, but he hasn't had any success this year. That being said, Russell Wilson's been hurt.
Really, historically, when you ask that question, it's really like the legendary coaches like Don Shula in Miami,
John Madden, rest in peace.
Yeah, John Madden, Tom Landry back in the day for the Dallas Cowboys. So, like, I mean, those are like the legendary, but those are like the standard coaches. Like, those are the guys Belichick is compared to, and rightfully so, because he is a defensive genius usually. Like, obviously, yesterday it didn't work out, but like, I don't know. So we'll see. I mean, we'll have to see what happens going forward. Even Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time, he got shut out by the New Orleans Saints this year, right? And that Saints team didn't even make the playoffs. So it happens. Like, sometimes the legends also lay duds at the worst time. So it's happened. So
And Brady's lost to New Orleans twice in the regular season, just like last year. So
Brady's also like, he is the greatest quarterback, but he's also had playoff games which have been very bad too. Let's not forget about that too. Against Baltimore, the Giants Super Bowl the first time when he only put up 14 points, even though he had the best offense of all time. So, you know, at the end of the day, like, I think Belichick, obviously he deserves blame for yesterday, but I think moving on from him would be a massive mistake. And I know Kraft is a very shrewd thinker. He's a very smart guy. He's going to think about it, and he should not let go of Bill Belichick at all. Maybe like the sons, sure, Steve and Brian. Okay, maybe
He's a shrewd guy, but I think their friendship will prevent Kraft from doing something about Belichick.
I mean, that's okay for now. Like, if it happens again, like if another 7-9 season had happened, or 7-10 this year, then you could have maybe made the argument that it's time to move on. But you made the playoffs with a rookie quarterback, as Ujan said. That's hard to do, especially when you look at these legendary quarterbacks. It's really hard. It's really unprecedented at this point that a coach at age 69, 70 is having to work with a rookie quarterback. Most of these guys don't want to work with that because it's a long-term deal usually. But Belichick at age 70 is basically taking over with a rookie quarterback and trying to build something new. And he's like, this is a good foundational step. Obviously, a pretty bad ending from last night, but this is something I can build on in 2022. I can see them totally building on it. And I know that he's going to go back to the drawing board and adapt his game plan for next year. Like, I already know that he's going to try to make sure, and he's going to remember this game. That's who he is. He's going to remind them the next time they play Buffalo in October or whenever they play them later this year, he's going to sit down the whole team and say, this is the same team that whacked us in January. And this is the game plan to make sure that this time they will be punting for sure against us. I can guarantee you that's going to be the game plan. He's going to have a whole offseason to think about this because that's who he is. Like, so I'm not too worried about it. He's shown incremental progress this year. So at the end of the day, I think you got to keep him, at least for now. Obviously, yeah, if the play slips up and you go like 5-12 these next few years, then yeah, sure. Then I'm on board with that because then the results are really slipping. But 7-9, he showed improvement this year. They made the playoffs after. And at the end of the day, last year, they got swept by Buffalo, 2 games. This time, you at least beat them once, and you beat them in Buffalo earlier in the year. Granted, it was the wind and kind of circumstances that were very unusual, but
then Buffalo. At that same time, right, in the game against Buffalo, we praised them for having that game plan of just, oh yeah, let's run the ball and just run it down their throat. And it was just working the entire time. We were praising him then. So, right, it was just like I don't know if it was really all Belichick or maybe Josh McDaniels had a say in that, but he plans for these games. Like, every single game, it's a different game plan based on the opponent. And that's what some coaches just like to have, like, all right, we're going to stick to this plan. I don't care who the opponent is. Let's try this. Doesn't really work out all the time. Think about it. Like, Arizona was 7-0 to start the season, and then they got hurt. They still tried to, stick with their same game plan, and now they're a wild card team, right? Like, it doesn't work for every team. Like, you can't just, you cannot just simply have the same game plan every week in, week out, right? So, and I think that's what Belichick is good at. He focuses on the details of this game. Like, he's going to study this film, as you said, Amartya. And, like I said, like we talked about earlier, we just have to be younger and more athletic. And then we might actually have a shot against this team.
Realistically, I think from now, you won 10 games this year, you move up from 7 games, right? Like, last year, 7 wins, now you're 10 wins. I don't think it's unrealistic to expect like 11, 12 wins next year now, like a 2-win improvement. You already had 3-win improvement. Granted, it is harder to move up, but now, I mean, go for 11-6, 12-5 next year. And with a proper offseason where you get younger on defense, you build around what you have an improved and more confident Mac Jones. I can see this team being 12-5 next year and really challenging Buffalo for the division. And, I'm really kind of going to be looking forward now. I'm looking ahead. But when we do this preview for next year's first Buffalo game, this is going to be a really fun one because then we're really going to be able to see how far this team has come from today or last night. So I don't think like anything is like overly like horrible for this team. I still think they're on the right track. Just a very obviously disappointing performance last night, but I still do think like they're in the right direction now. They are trending upward, and rookie quarterbacks, historically, they've never won a Super Bowl. No rookie quarterback has ever won a Super Bowl. So all these great quarterbacks too, they weren't rookies when they officially became a starter. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, none of these guys really started at all as rookies. So what Mac Jones has been doing this year, like that's ahead of the curve of some of these legends. That doesn't mean he's going to become a legend like these guys, but he's on the right track. He's progressing in the upward direction. So
The
let's
other
see.
thing I will say, right, is I think the last time a rookie quarterback started a playoff game was Lamar Jackson in 2018. And, the coach then, now is still John Harbaugh. And he loved having like a Joe Flacco, like kind of stand in the pocket quarterback. But he changed his entire offense so that, Lamar Jackson, because he knew he could see what Lamar Jackson was made of, right? And, it's sometimes it's hard for these coaches to like make that change like also suddenly like, oh, we have this quarterback, he's totally different from what I'm used to. Like I think John Harbaugh's done pretty good at it, as much as I hate to say it all. I know Baltimore missed the playoffs and his decision making is something else. I'll put
But
it that way.
going for 2 twice when you're down by 1.
Yeah, seriously. But I think he still has a smart mind. It's kind of like Kyle Shanahan, he and Kyle Shanahan, like they have smart minds and like they know like what pieces fit their puzzle. Like everyone's puzzle is different. Bill Belichick's is different from anybody else's, like Andy Reid's or some of the first year coaches like Robert Saleh's, right? So it's just, like you said, Marta, I'm excited for what is to come. And, we'll have 7 months or so 7-8 months before we end up talking about the next Patriots game. But,
Yeah, but there's still plenty to talk about. In March, free agency begins. April's a huge, huge draft for this team again to improve on. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about in the meantime. But of course, we'll be covering the other teams more. So we are excited to get back into that soon. But yeah, does anyone else want to talk about this situation at all? Or I think we had a pretty good discussion. Yeah,
On to next year.
Exactly. No, it was a good year, right? Like I think all of us at least were satisfied for this year. We're okay.
Yeah,
next year we have bigger standards.
Better than expectations. If the benchmark is expectations at the beginning of the year, but if the benchmark is expectations towards the end of this season, like latter half of this regular season, it's definitely a disappointment. But it's just the nature of the game and how expectations shift and the kind of players they get and the kind and the way that they end up executing. So it's going to be an interesting way to see how the Patriots recover from this or lack thereof, and it's going to be an interesting case study in that. Meanwhile, for the city of Buffalo, congratulations to them. Despite all that, we forgot to give credit to them.
They were terrific. Like I'm just going to say this again. I picked Buffalo to win the Super Bowl at the start of the season, and I picked them to win last night, and they are my pick to win Super Bowl 56. So I have from the start of the season
and the way they looked last night. They definitely looked like a Super Bowl caliber team, even against juggernauts like Tampa Bay. They can give Tampa a run for their money. So TB12, watch out for Buffalo. I know you dominated them for this long, but just like all trends can reverse, this one can reverse too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Buffalo, terrific game plan. Josh Allen, he is a legit quarterback. He's a stud. And that is one thing Bill Belichick will have to be very wary of going forward because the AFC East, besides, has a new stud quarterback, and his name is not Tom Brady. At least, hopefully, we'll have another one soon in Mac Jones. But for now, like Josh Allen is the real deal, and that whole team is terrific. So no, it was a terrific win for them, and we'll see what happens going forward how they do whoever they play next round. We'll find out tonight. But yeah, That's going to be
Yeah,
it.
and for the Bills Mafia, enjoy watching our meltdown, if that's how you perceive it.
I'll
But
be
anyway,
honest though, I don't think the meltdown here is as bad because I think a lot of us have become very jaded by the success. So like this is almost like, you know what, like I mean just 28 like 18, right? They won the Super Bowl in 2018. That was 3 years ago at this point. Like all of us still remember that, right? Even like 2016, we all remember that. We all remember 2014. So I mean, even though that was 7 years ago, we have like 3 Super Bowls. The Bills have never won like anything. Like this is like their probably
oh
biggest
yeah,
win in a long time.
and for the Bills Mafia, Bills Nation, whatever you want to call it, I mean, they have a giant chip on their shoulder. So this moment is really for them,
I mean,
even
it's
though
for
it
them,
comes,
but now they have to
even though
actually do something with it.
even though it does come at our expense. So that's just the nature of sports, right?
I mean, it
No
comes
one can
to
dominate
that,
forever.
but here's the thing, though, right? Like, I mean, this is just the first step. They got to win 3 more games to win that Lombardi Trophy, right? Can they do that? We don't know yet.
Yes, I do. I mean, given their showing last night, I think they're capable of anything at this point.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
they can
But they
do
still
it.
have a lot of
They
work
have
to do. That's what I'm trying to say
yeah.
at this point. They still got 3 games to go. So let's see what happens from there. This was a great win for them. Now let's see if they can replicate that performance against Kansas City and Mahomes or whoever they face next week if the Steelers do win tonight. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and also just one last thing, like this was actually the first time the Pats had played the Bills in the playoffs since 1963, right? Which kind of tells, I mean, it's been a very I only know this because the New England Patriots Facebook page, but what that, but think about it, right? We talk about the big game, kind of the how the AFC East has really been the New England show for really the Brady Belichick era. I mean, imagine like this is I guess like symbolically the biggest game I can imagine, the biggest game in Buffalo probably in 20 years is fair to say. So yeah, ran up the score on us. Yeah, sure, we'll take it. We'll come back next year and we'll see what happens. I mean, there's a lot of talk about power shift, the end of a dynasty, passing a torch, whatever you want to call it. Let's see what happens. If it happens, it happens. But they made it through the wild card. Now you have to win not only one Super Bowl, you got to be consistently good for a while. You got to dominate the AFC East for a while. So I understand. I mean, the rest of the league is definitely hoping that happens, hoping the Patriots are kind of mucking around in third place or whatever for a while. But let's see what actually happens.
exactly. Yeah. So anyways, it was a solid season overall, and we will definitely still be following the NFL playoffs. Our next few episodes will still cover the NFL playoffs primarily, but come Super Bowl time, we'll definitely shift over to the other Boston team. So we are excited about that.
Yeah, let's hope that the MLB lockout situation gets resolved at some point or the other, right? Because I mean, like right now, we're still in the depths of winter, and at this point, we don't know what's going to happen with spring training. But pitchers and catchers do have to report in a little over a month, and right now the labor negotiations are not looking good. So we could get a delayed season, whatever it may be. And of course, a side note here, I mean, the Red Sox also exceeded expectations last year, even though the expectations weren't really that great at the beginning of the year, but they did make it to the ALCS. So, I mean, that's just the nature of Boston sports in general. I mean, Patriots exceed expectations, Red Sox exceed expectations last year, and the Bruins are hot right now, and the Celtics are kind of chugging along. There's more to New England than football, and we're gonna focus on all that. And to all of you who've been following us, to all of you who've been watching us, listening to us, thank you very much, and we appreciate your support, and we hope to serve you in the future.
Definitely. But yeah, enjoy the rest of the playoffs, everyone, and we will be back next week to once again preview the divisional round. Even though the Patriots aren't in it, we will be back next week. Until then, enjoy the rest of the games tonight and tomorrow, and yeah, have a good one.
Peace.